Good morning. So we're continuing with Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Fathers, from the Mishnah, edited around the year 200. We're in chapter 6. We're up to Mishnah number 4. Actually, Braita number 4. What's the difference between a Mishnah and a Braita? We've got the teachings of the rabbis that go up to the year 220 or so, and those that were canonized, that were included in a book of laws, were called the Mishnah. There were many other teachings of the rabbis of the 1st, 2nd, 3rd century. They were not included in the book, in the Mishnah, the codification of law, and they're called Braitot. They were often quoted and used by the rabbis of the Gemara. The rabbis of the Gemara are those rabbis who come after the year 220 and the codification of the Mishnah and discuss the Mishnah. And their discussions become the Gemara, or what we call the Talmud. When you put the Mishnah and then the discussions on the Mishnah and the Gemara together, you have the Talmud. Okay, so we're in chapter 6, and just a reminder, there were originally only 5 chapters in the Pirkei Avot. We added a 6th because people wanted to study this between Passover and Shavuot. Shavuot is the time of the giving of the Torah. The 6th chapter, the added chapter, coming from Braitot, from other teachings not in the Mishnah, all deal with the issue of Kinyan Torah, the best way to acquire Torah. So if you have the Lev Shalem, we're on page 259. If you have just any version of Pirkei Avot, chapter 6, Mishnah Braita number 4. Okay, before we dive in, I want you to think about the following question. If you were a Marine Corps recruiter, you were trying to recruit people for the Marines, okay? And there are 2 ads that are being suggested. The first ad is a Marine in his dress uniform. So you've got that gorgeous blue, and you got the red stripe down the pants, and you've got the white hat and the white gloves, and you've got the gold buttons, and you've got the sword, and he's standing at attention, and his shoes, that kind of patent leather, perfectly shined. You could see your face in it. And so you have a picture of this Marine in dress uniform from all different angles. That's the first ad. Join us, become like him. Here's the second ad. We imagine, whether it's Paris Island or some place where Marines are being trained, and they're wearing their fatigues and their helmets, and they got dirt and mud all over their faces, and they're climbing up that rope and going over that giant wall, or they're crawling in the mud underneath the barbed wire, and they're running with packs, 50-pound packs on their backs through the desert, right? And they're grunting and yelling and the whole deal. So the question is, which of these 2 is going to be more successful in getting you to sign up? Now, I think our first reaction is obviously the first one. I want to look like that guy with his uniform. But I think that people who are actually going to join the Marines are probably more interested in the second image. In other words, here's a challenge. I want to be a guy who overcomes the challenges. That other guy in the uniform with the sword, he looks nice, but what does he do? Those guys who are climbing the rope and going through the desert, That's what I want to do. That's who I want to be. It's because it's a challenge and I want to overcome it, right? So two very different images, and which one are people going to be attracted to? Keep that in your mind. Let's dive into the Braita Mishnah number 4, Dalet. So it goes like this. Kach hi darka shel Torah. This is the life of Torah, or the way of Torah. Pat b'melach tochel. We're talking about a salty crust of bread. In other words, a piece of bread dipped in salt, that's your whole meal, right? And then what are you going to wash it down with? Umayim bimsura tishteh. Ration your drinking water. Okay. V'al haaretz tishan. Sleep on the ground, not in a fluffy bed with my pillow. V'chayei tsa'ar tichyeh. Live a life of suffering, trouble. Here they translate privation. Uva Torah ata amel. And in the Torah you shall exhaust yourself. Ve'im ata osechem. And if you do this, right, then they quote from the book of Psalms, Psalm number 128, Ashrecha, like in Ashrei ushvei vetecha, you will be happy, v'tovlach, and all will be good for you. And then the rabbis take that verse, Ashrecha v'tovlach, and they parse it out. Ashrecha, when will you be happy? Ba'olam hazeh, in this world. V'tovlach, and when will things be good for you? Le'olam haba, in the world to come. So the first statement, the first thing we have to say is, really, do you think you're going to attract people to the yeshiva by telling them, this is what we serve every day, a crust of bread dipped in salt and a little bit of water. And the dormitories at night, you're going to sleep in the dust on the floor. Why are they telling people this? And really, this is the way that you achieve Torah, that you only can learn Torah. You're successful in getting Torah only if you live that kind of life of privation. I'm not sure I want to sign up for that. So on the one hand, I'm wondering if, like the Marine ad, if for people, if there's a certain kind of person that if you give him a challenge, right, that's what he is going to say, yes, count me in. Sign me up. That's what I want. As opposed to if you'd say, okay, here's the story. You're going to live in the ivory tower. You're going to have a pampered life. You're not going to have to deal with physical things that most other people deal with. You're going to get a good salary. You're going to eat well. People will respect you. You'll be famous. You'll be, if not rich, then very comfortable. People are going to sign up for that. And in those who do, maybe we don't want them because maybe they're looking for all the perks and they're not looking for Torah itself. As opposed to here, they're offering this challenge. You want Torah? Then this is what the cost is. This is what you got to pay in tuition if you want Torah. And there's going to be a lot of people who said, sorry, I didn't sign up for that. But there's going to be some people who are truly dedicated, who understand that's what I want. And that's what I'm willing to give. And those people, are not going to quit 6 weeks into it and say, I had no idea it was going to be this tough. Well, when the recruiting poster told me I'm sleeping on the floor and eating bread crusts dipped in salt, you knew what you got yourself into. So that's on the one hand. Maybe there's another explanation. And maybe the other explanation is that ultimately in the 2nd, 3rd century in the land of Israel, with Roman persecution and occupation, with the temple destroyed, with the land ravaged, with many, many people dead. Those people who indeed dedicated their lives to Torah and to teaching Torah, it was a pretty miserable life. So this is not, here's what you can expect if you sign up for this program. It's, I see what you people have sacrificed in order to commit yourself to Torah. So know that it's not that you're an idiot or a jerk and other people do it better. This is what's involved. And good for you that you've done it. And then let's look at the proof text. Remember, if the rabbis can bring a quote from the Bible, that's always much better than somebody who says, I think. Okay, so Ashrecha v'tovlach. Remember, because we're going to see this, I think, at the end today, the essence of biblical poetry is parallelism. Right? It's not rhyme, it's not meter, it's parallelism. There's a clause. The clause has 2 parts. A says whatever you're saying. B usually repeats A, but uses different words. That's how biblical poetry worked. What the rabbis did, coming 500, 1,000 years later, was to say, no, that's not, the reason that the Bible repeats itself is because it's not simply the poet's way of saying something twice and being clever. Rather, it's the Bible's way of saying that there's 2 meanings here, meaning A and then meaning B. And what the rabbis are doing is they're saying meaning A is this world and meaning B is the next world. Jews have it pretty miserable in this world. Don't be upset. Don't be impatient. When you get to the next world, you will be rewarded for whatever trouble. But they go even beyond that, and they say, the second clause, v'tovlach, it will be good for you in the world to come. You will be rewarded for all the suffering and for all the privation in this world. But even in this world, ashrecha, you will be happy. And happy doesn't necessarily mean in a material sense. Ashrecha, you will have the sense, even though you're hungry and poor, and sleeping on the ground and eating crusts of salty bread, you will have a sense that I'm doing something that counts, that's meaningful. Okay, so that's our first Braita. Let's look at the next one. We follow about the life of Torah with Braita number 5. Al tivakesh gedula liatzmach. Don't seek out greatness, or here it's high position for yourself. V'al tachmod kavod, and don't covet. Same word as in the last of the 10 commandments. Lo tachmod, you shall not covet. Do not covet kavod, honor, respect. Okay, so maybe I'm willing to give up the material things of life. I'm not going to eat rib steak every night, right? And sleep in a fluffy bed. I get it. But at least I will be honored and respected, and people will look up to me if I am a Torah scholar. And here they say, forget about that one too. And then they say, Yoter mi limudach aseh. And even more important than what you learn, if you spend your days learning, aseh. More important is what you do. We've seen this already in the 1st and the 2nd chapter of Pirkei Avot, and so we have many ideas that come back and that are repeated. And then, v'al titaveh, and do not crave or lust for, l'shulchanam shel malachim. Don't wish for the table of kings. Don't imagine yourself like you might imagine the Roman procurator or the Roman emperor or the Caesar, right? Sitting at this banquet table, golden vessels, all the most wonderful foods. Sheshulchanach, your table, remember, with the little cup of water and the little piece of bread, is gadol mishulchanam, is greater than their table. So again, we're being told the material things, they don't count for much. They grasp your eye. You may say, boy, that looks good. But in the end, not so good. The kitrach, and the crown that you wear as a Torah scholar, is gadol mikitram, is greater than the keter, the crown that the kings wear. V'ne'emanhu ba'al malachtach, and your employer. Remember, we saw this again back in the first and second chapters, the idea that God as your boss and you as the worker, and your boss will be faithful. He can be relied upon. Shalem lach, to pay you schar pe'ulatach, to pay you your compensation, your salary, your reward for all your labors. Okay, so it may seem hard, but ultimately you will be rewarded in the world to come. What is that reward? Different Jewish philosophers have imagined it very differently. You know, I think we talked a couple of weeks ago about the Yiddish folk song that imagines that there's a suddenyu, that there's a banquet, right? And that Miriam dances and Solomon preaches and Moses gives the Dvar Torah, and there is Leviathan, and all these great foods are there. That's the world to come. But there's other images of what the reward is, and they are purely of a spiritual nature. You become one with the presence of God. Okay, so the rabbis don't spend much time explaining or detailing or describing, but wait till you get there, it's going to be worth it. Okay, now we come to a rather long Braita, so let's dive in. Here we are with Braita number 6, Vav, and it says the following: Gedolah Torah, Torah is greater, min hakehuna, than the priesthood, umin hamalchut, and greater than kingship or royalty, right? You remember also a couple of chapters ago, we said that there were 3 crowns. The crown of the priesthood. So if you're descended from Aaron and you are, by heredity, you are a Kohen, that's a pretty special thing. Then there's the crown of Malchut. You're descended from King David. And ultimately, in the future, you or one of your descendants may become the Messiah, the next king of Israel. So those were the 2 great crowns, but those are connected with genealogy. Can't buy into it. And then we were told, but there's a 3rd crown, the crown of, of Torah, and that's open to anybody, right, by learning, and that one is better than the other 2. So now we're told, why is Torah better than royalty or priesthood? Shahamalchut nikneit b'shloshim ma'alot, that kingship is acquired through 30 qualities or 30 perks. V'hakehuna, and the priesthood comes be'esrim, the arba, with 24. But v'hatorah nikneit, but if you become a person of Torah, then you get Arba'im Ushmona Devarim, 48 things. So 24, 30, and 48. Obviously, the 48 is better. So we need to say the following about the 30 and the 24, about kingship and priesthood. There's nothing in Pirkei Avot, in this Braita or any place else. What are the things that you get, the rewards, the perks? What goes along with being a Kohen or with being a king? It's not there. They skip over it. They do go into the 48 things that you get or that you need for a life of Torah, which we're going to get into in a moment. So you should know that the commentaries can't just leave this. When it comes to kingship, and there are 30 things that a king gets that become part of being the king. Where do they get this from? So they go back to the warning that Samuel the prophet gave to the people when they demanded, we want a king, anoint us a king. And Samuel comes, first book of Samuel, chapter 8, and Samuel tells the people, here's what the king's going to do. He's going to tax you. He's going to take your daughters for his harem. He's going to take your sons for his army. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. And they go through, in the book of Samuel, there's not exactly 30 things, but the rabbis, in interpreting it, they expand it up to 30. Then, when it comes to, okay, so what does the priest get? The 24 things. And then going through the Talmud, which went through mainly the book of Leviticus and some of the book of Numbers, the rabbis came up with 24 perks or salary things that the Kohen received. You know, he got the first fruits. He got this part of this animal for this sacrifice. He got this kind of grain offering. So, and they count them up and they ultimately come up with 24 things. So you might have thought that it's good to be the king, as the movie says. And the answer is that, okay, you get 30 things, but not as good as being a Torah man. And then you might have thought, the Kohen, he gets all these things that people bring with their sacrifices. That's pretty good, but not as good as being a Torah man. So now we need to go through the Torah things. And there's sort of an ambiguity here, because the idea with the first two, with kingship and with priesthood, is that these are the perks that you get if you are the king or the priest. But the same word is used, and the word is nikneit, from koner, and here it's translated, Torah is acquired through 48 things. Okay, and the idea is that are these, in order to get Torah, you need these things, or if you commit yourself to Torah, these are the rewards. It's sort of ambiguous. The way that this is set up, it would have followed kingship, priesthood. This is what you get out of Torah. But actually, as we read these things, it's more in the realm of this is what you need in order to become a Torah person. Okay? So imagine, you sign up your kid for a special class in 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade for how do you take the SATs? What skills, what tricks do you need to know in order to get a higher mark on the SAT? Or imagine that in high school, there might be a course that told you, You're going to college, right? You can't have your mother come in every time you don't do well on a test and demand that you get a retest. That's not the way college works. So we're going to give you a course that teaches you how to be a college student, what's required, what you need to know, how you have to study. In a sense, that's what this Breita is really about. So let's look at the 48 things that are necessary in order to get Torah. And one more thing that I need to say, and that's when we think of the word Torah, don't think of a book or a body of knowledge. Think about a way of living. Okay, so that's what could be a little confusing, right? How do I get Torah? Well, here's the book. Open it, read it, reread it, study it, learn it, memorize it. You got Torah. We're looking at something different. We're not talking about a body of knowledge. We're talking about how people live their lives. Okay? In the yeshiva world, they refer to somebody as a ben Torah, literally a son of Torah. So it doesn't mean once you've studied the 5 books of Moses, you are a ben Torah. It doesn't mean once you could read every passage from the Torah scroll, you're a ben Torah. Being a ben Torah is how you deal with people, right? Based on Torah values. Okay, so let's dive in. Let's look at the 48 things that you need in order to become a ben Torah, a Torah son of Torah, or a Torah person. The Eluhem, the Talmud. So that's an easy one. Talmud, you know the word, either the body of work that's commentary on the Mishnah, the Talmud, but they don't mean it in that specific sense. Talmud in the sense of Talmud Torah, right? A Talmud Torah meaning the learning. Talmud from the word lomed, okay? So first is you gotta study, you gotta learn. You can't become a ben Torah without knowledge. You could be a mensch, you could be a nice person, but to be a Torah person, you need to have Torah under your belt. Okay, next thing is Shmiat HaOzen. The Shmiat from Shema Yisrael, Shmiat, the listening ear. You have to be able to listen. There are too many people who don't listen. They just talk. And number 2 on the hit parade here is you gotta be willing to listen. Okay, Arichat Sfatayim. So here they say careful use of speech. But actually, there's another way of understanding this, and it is that when you study Torah, you need to say it out loud. The way we've all been taught to learn in America, in the West, is you open a book and you read quietly. That is not the way traditionally Jews studied. You study by saying it out loud. If you walk into a library, you know, everybody knows you got to keep quiet. Shh. If you walk into a yeshiva, you can barely hear yourself think, because everybody in this yeshiva, and it could be 10 people, could be 100 people, are all talking out loud back and forth. And you learn, first of all, by saying it to hear yourself. And by saying it, you learn to block out everybody else who's talking. And in a sense, that becomes a kind of a challenge. You know, say it in such a way that you hear yourself and not everybody else. And here was a sense that by talking it, by saying it, it registers in your brain more than just reading it and thinking it. So two very different approaches to learning. And according to the traditional Jewish thing, it's got to be out loud. Okay, then we go binat halev, a heart that understands. It's not enough just to repeat it and say it. It's got to be an internal understanding of what it is that you just said. Each one is at a higher level. You got to be able to listen, you got to be able to say it, then you got to be able to comprehend it. Then sichlut halev, right? So here they talk about insight. That's the way they translate it. But sichlut it's from the Hebrew, but the Yiddish form is seichel. When we talk about seichel, we're talking about common sense. So not only do you need to have a deeper understanding of the concepts, but you need to have this idea of seichel. Don't get too deep in something that you're missing what's obviously right there. Then he says, the next one is ema, right? And ema is literally fear. So in order to achieve Torah, you need to have fear. Fear of what? Well, maybe it's fear of making a mistake. Maybe it's fear of offending God. Maybe it's fear of not understanding and being proved, inadequate. Right? So all of those things are possible. And you need to have a sense of humility, which we'll get to in a second, fear. And unless, if you think I'm going to master this material, I'm going to master the Torah, right? It can't get beyond me. It's not going to happen. You need to go in with a sense of this is greater than me. This comes from God. Speaking of God, then we have the next quality, which is b'yirah. Yirah is awe, A-W-E, right? There's a difference between fear and awe, although often in either in the Sidur or the Chumash, they're not so careful about it, but they're really very different. Fear is trembling. I'm shaking in fear. Awe, you're not scared, right? You just realize your place as compared to God's place. The next one is anava, humility. Okay, so yes, you can be in fear, but that should lead to a sense of being humble, humble, humility in the face of everything. Next one is simcha, very important. That if there's no joy in it, then you're never going to master it. If it's all about this is a test. It's material. I have to pass the test. Once I pass the test, move on to the next thing. Then you're on the wrong path. It's got to be, as I study this, it brings me a sense of simcha. I rejoice in that I can understand it, but more importantly, I rejoice in, how beautiful it is, how magnificent, how it's opened my eyes and my heart, and it brings me that kind of joy. Next one is shimush chachamim, which is attending to scholars. In other words, if the teacher, he's got a cough, he's choking, you say, Rebbe, can I go get you a cup of tea or a glass of water? And be quick to run out. And you're almost like a servant, for a wealthy person. But here you're not doing it for a sense of reward. You realize that the rabbi, the teacher, the professor is the embodiment of Torah. So you're not just serving him, you are, serving Torah and all it represents. Next is dibuk chaverim. Dibuk, same word in Yiddish as dibuk. A dibuk is something that sticks to you, clings to you. Usually in the Yiddish, we're referring to the soul of a dead person that takes over your body. That's what a dibuk is. But here in the Hebrew, dibuk means clinging or the coming together, right? And here they translate it as challenging exchanges with students. Dibuk chaverim, hanging in together with your friends. More than friends is with your study partner. Then the next one is pilpul hatalmidim. Now, pilpul, when we use it in the Yiddish sense of the word, is often considered a negative term. In the yeshiva, they might say, what you're saying is all pilpul. In other words, you're giving a forced roundabout explanation. You're looking for obscure details and you're emphasizing them instead of paying attention to the main ideas. That's pilpul. Right? And again, at certain points in Jewish history, for people to be able to do that, pilpul was considered a great skill, but later it was denigrated because most people didn't have that skill, and they said, so he's clever, so he could take this and make it mean that, and turn something upside down, and find something that doesn't seem to be there and something, that looks plain, but he's going to find something deeper in there. But here in the Hebrew, in the positive sense, pilpul hatalmidim means your ability to delve, your ability to see things not only on a simple level, but on a deeper level. Next one. Yishuv, the word yishuv here, they translate as equanimity. Not sure what they mean by that, but yishuv, equanimity, refers to a calm nature, that you're accepting of things, right? As opposed to being upset, freaking out, flying off the handle. Yishuv is calm, collected. Okay, that too is part of study. You can imagine somebody who's trying to learn something very difficult, and if he can't get it and he flings the book and he screams and yells and he storms out of class or out of the yeshiva or the library, that's not going to be helpful. You got to take a deep breath, you got to count to 10, and you got to try again, and you got to be calm. That's what equanimity means here. Next one, mikra. Mikra is scripture. Too often, especially in recent centuries, when people studied, in a yeshiva, they didn't study Bible so much. That maybe they heard in shul on Shabbos, but you didn't learn it. You learned Mishnah, Gemara, and Halacha. Those were the subject matters. Here they're telling you need to learn the Torah. And not just from sitting in shul and listening to the Torah reader. You need to study it, not just hear it. And then on top of Mikra, you've got Mishnah, the Mishnah, right? The code of law. 6 orders of the Mishnah that encompass, all of Jewish tradition. Next one is b'miut sichora, with a minimum of business. If you're working 12-hour days at the store or in your office, you're not going to have time for Torah. You want to do Torah, then you have to do the minimal amount of business in order to make a living and get by. But then beyond that, no. Next one, miut sheina, and you can't do a lot of sleeping, right? The minimum amount of sleep. If you luxuriate in bed as opposed to getting up early and spending, your free time studying. You're never going to ultimately achieve what you need to achieve. Next one, miut sicha, minimizing conversation, talking. If you talk too much, if you hang out at the street corner, if you tell jokes, if you're doing all of those things, then you're not studying. So you got to minimize it. Doesn't say get rid of it, just miut, from the word ma'at, la'at, right? Very small amount. Next one, miut ta'anug. Ta'anug, like from the word oneg Shabbat, the joy. Oneg Shabbat usually refers to a material thing, a physical thing. Usually it's the cake, it's the desserts. Those are understood as oneg Shabbat. You need to minimize the amount of pleasures that you give yourself. Next one, miut sechok, minimizing laughter. You hang around telling jokes all day or going to the comedy club, you're not learning Torah seriously. Next one, miut derech eretz. Okay, derech eretz. This is a very ambiguous term that has many meanings. We've already seen this term earlier, and derech eretz, when we use it in Yiddish, we mean menschlichkeit, treat a person with derech eretz, act with derech eretz, means be honest, be fair, be decent. But there's another understanding. Some people, derech eretz, literally the way of the earth, and to them that means science, okay, or those secular subjects on a high level. Right? So if you spend your time studying science subjects or secular subjects, you're taking away time from religious subjects, from holy subjects. And that, of course, is one of the great questions and discussions and debates in a day school or in a yeshiva world. How much time do we need to spend on math and science and literature? Because every minute that we devote to that, we're taking away from Torah. Now, there are some ultra-Orthodox yeshivas who basically don't have any of those subjects. You know that there was been a whole controversy coming out of the yeshiva world in Brooklyn in the last couple of years, in which ex-yeshiva student was sort of suing, forcing the city of New York to impose on the ultra-Orthodox yeshivas that you need to teach these people mathematics. You need to teach kids in yeshiva all about science and health and all of those subjects. And of course, in the ultra-Orthodox yeshiva, they resist that completely. To them, it's a waste of time. What do you need it for? In the modern Orthodox yeshiva, and ultimately, if we look at Yeshiva University, is basically founded on the concept of Torah im derech eretz. And here they mean Torah with secular knowledge. Because in the modern Orthodox world, math and science, that's part of God's world. You can't really understand the Torah properly and the Talmud properly unless you understand astronomy and you understand geology and geography and all of the sciences. So what made Yeshiva University special, right, was this idea of Torah and science, that both of them are worthwhile subjects to learn. In the ultra-Orthodox world, they're not hearing of it. And in fact, the trend today in the Jewish world is, sadly, in my opinion, away from the modern Orthodox viewpoint, away from the Yeshiva University approach, and more towards the ultra-Orthodox Yeshiva, the Haredi approach, which is it's all about Torah subjects, and everything else is waste of time. Okay? But there's one more possible explanation of Derech Eretz, right? What is it? Derech Eretz also can mean sex. So according to that interpretation, what they're saying is you want to know Torah, you want to achieve Torah, you can't have too much sleep, you can't have too much fooling around, you can't have too much joking, can't have too many pleasures, can't have too much sex, okay, just the minimum in order to fulfill the mitzvah of be fruitful and multiply. Okay, we're moving on. Erech Apayim, you need patience, and that's clear. We're dealing with subject matters that are very difficult, and unless you have patience, if you're impatient, you're never going to become a Ben Torah, a Torah person. Then we're told, Lev Tov, a good heart. Before we saw the idea of an understanding heart. A good heart has to do with generosity to others, helping somebody else who may be having difficulty in understanding something that you've already figured out. Emunat chachamim, trust in the sages, trust in the scholars, trusting that they know what they're talking about, and that what they're talking about is of worth and is good, and that you should follow. Next, Kabbalat hayisurim, accepting suffering. If you live this kind of life, you're not going to have a lot of pleasures, and there may be some suffering. And you need to accept that in order to ultimately achieve Torah. Makiret mikomo, to know one's place, who you are, not only in the hierarchy of teacher-student, but within the realm of students, that there are other students who know more than you, and you need to show them respect. Students who know less, you need to show them help. V'hasameach b'chalko. Somebody, we saw this back in chapter 4 of Pirkei Avot. Who's the rich person? Somebody who's happy with his portion, with his lot. You need that if you're going to want to achieve all this. Oseh siyad lidvarav. You make a fence around your words, right? You be careful what you say. Ve'eno machzik tova le'atzmo. And don't pat yourself on the back. Don't always go around looking, don't ever go around looking for kudos or for how wonderful you are. That's not what Torah is about. You also need to be ahuv, beloved. If you're a miserable SOB, that's not the way to achieve becoming a Ben Torah. You've got to be a nice person that people want to gravitate to you. Ohevet hamakom, you've got to love God. It's not about you and the text. The text comes from God. You got to love God. Ohevet habriot, you also got to love people. So here we see this triangle: God, people, you. Okay, and you've got to have a good connection with God and a good connection with people. There are some people who are so pious they don't want to deal with people. They can't get along with people. They don't like people. And there are people who, they're wonderful with others, but God doesn't fit in the picture. The triangle has to be complete. Ohevet hatzdakot. So the word from tzedakahs could mean tzedakah, charity, but it could also mean tzedek, righteousness. You've got to love being righteous, doing the right thing in order to be. You can't learn, you can't be knowledgeable and then do the wrong thing. Ohevet hamesharim, and honesty. You got to be straight. Ohevet hatochachot. If you're a student of Torah and you make a mistake, somebody is going to give you a tochacha. That's a rebuke. Either because you misunderstood or you misbehaved, you have to accept it. If you are always on the defensive, that's not good. Next, mitrachek min hakavod. Go far away from kavod. Run from honor. That's not what the life of Torah is about. V'lo megis libo b'talmudo. And don't become arrogant. Oh, I know so much, I'm wonderful. Okay? Ve'eno sameach b'hora'ah. Don't think it's a great thing for people to come up to you and say, what's the answer to this halachic question? A lot of people say, I'm happy that people think I'm so knowledgeable, and I'm thrilled to be the one to give them the answer. No, you should be scared. There are times when you're going to need to give people the answer, but you should always never be happy about it. You should always be in awe and in fear that you might make a mistake. Nosei ba'ol im chavero. You carry the yoke, the burden with your friend. You're willing to work with others. It's not just about you and the text, or you and the teacher, or you and God. It's the guy sitting next to you. Umachriya l'chaf zechut. You also need to give people the benefit of the doubt, right? You think you know something, you think you understand something, there might be another explanation. To be a ben Torah, you always have to give people the benefit of the doubt. Uma'amido al ha'emet. But when you learn that they've made a mistake and they're saying something that's wrong or false, you have an obligation to set them right, but doing it obviously in the best way. Uma'amido al hashalom. All right, this is how do you do these two things? Set somebody right when they've made a mistake, but do it in a way that still maintains peace between you and them. And how you correct somebody becomes very important. Umit yashev b'talmudo, and this is you are at peace with what you've learned. Shoel Meshiv, you constantly have to be Shoel, ask questions, and Meshiv, you can challenge, you can ask, but always from the right place. And Meshiv, and when people challenge or question you, you don't just say, because I said so. You need to answer them appropriately. Shomea umosif, you listen, we heard this before, and you mosif, you add. If you hear something and you know something in addition, don't just keep quiet and say they're not worth it or I know better. You're part of a group that's trying to get up the ladder together. V'halomed al menat lilamed, you learn in order to teach, right? It's an obligation once you know to share it with somebody else. V'halomed al menat la'asot. And once you learn, you are then obligated to do it, to perform it. It's not just intellectual or academic. We learn in order to teach. We learn in order to perform. Hamachkim et rabo. Your job is also to make your Rebbe, your rabbi, smarter by the challenges, by the questions. Okay, but always done respectfully. You're going to machkim from the word chochem, right? Make him into a greater smart person. Hamechavein et shemuato, and you need to direct your, what you've heard and make sure it's done in the right way. And then the final one is v'ha'omer davar b'shem omro. Always remember to give credit to the person who said it or who taught it. Okay? Never pretend you made it up or you figured it out. If you learned it from somebody, always give them credit. That's one of the highest things in the Jewish study world. Where do we learn this? Shekol ha'omer davar b'shem omro. Anybody who does this, mevi ge'ula le'olam. You will bring redemption and deliverance to the world. Wait a minute, isn't that a little exaggerating? I mean, by saying, I learned this from so-and-so, and all of a sudden you're going to save the world because you mentioned his name, you quoted him? What's going on? So the rabbis, of course, will quote us a verse, and they go in the Torah to the Bible, to the book of Esther. And it says, Vatomer Esther lamelech b'shem Mordechai. Mordechai overheard two guys who were plotting to assassinate the king. Mordechai tells Esther, Esther tells the king, but she tells the king, b'shem Mordechai. She said, there's a guy out there, Mordechai, who learned that Bigtan and Teresh are trying to kill you, right? So what is the king has them arrested, has them executed, and of course writes into the book that on this day Mordechai, revealed a plot against me. And later in the book, when the king can't sleep, and he has his record book read to him, and says, what did we ever reward Mordechai? And they say no. So that is the step that leads ultimately to Mordechai receiving all the great honors. But more importantly, when it comes time for the Jews to be slaughtered, Esther and Mordechai are able to say to the king, we saved your life. We need you to save us. And the king allows them. So Geulah, redemption, deliverance, did come to the Jewish people because of precisely that. So a pretty long and exhaustive Baraita, but it reminds us not only about Torah, but about the process of learning in whatever form, whether it's secular studies, whether it's in the university, the idea of how do you go about learning? And it's a reminder, 48 different things you need. And it's a reminder that it's not just about you read it again, you remember it, you write it down on the test, and you've learned it, right? From a Jewish point of view, learning is a lot deeper of a process. So we'll pick it up next week. See you then.